Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm going to talk about the style right now. I started recording already. So I said that the image of of the society which is pictured into the novel is a horrifying image, yet it is logical in one way. Why? Because you will always find a tyrant person who is actually supported by his own party and a lot of followers following him. And why? Because, yeah, corrupt and terrifying, but logical with some exaggeration. Accordingly, the writer creates a kind of anti-utopia, as we said, so believable and shocking, right? So, well, what are the qualities of the anti-utopia that we talked about before at the beginning of the play, of the novel, if you still remember? The anti-utopia in 1984 is written by two techniques, right? The first technique is said satire, all right? The second technique is the simple presentation. What do you mean by this and what do we mean by this? So we will talk about satire first of all. And after we finish talking about satire, we will talk about the simple presentation by giving you examples. Well, right, the most of the novel is a kind of verbal irony, either verbal irony or a situational irony. And I know that you are familiar with the definition of the verbal irony and the difference between the seizure. I mean, like, a person inside the novel says something, but he means actually the opposite. Like, for example, right, the names of ministries, these are verbal ironies. Okay, the name of the big brother is actually big, a kind of a verbal irony because he is a tyrant, actually. Right. Well, rehabilitation means annihilation, means the opposite. So the first type of satire used by the writer in order to show his anti-utopia is the verbal irony. The verbal irony, which is saying something but he means the opposite. Then also he uses the situational irony. Right? There's a situation in which we expect that it is going to end up in a certain way, but it ends in the opposite, right? The complete opposite. Not only a situation, it might refer also to people, to persons, right? Look at this. The character of O'Brien. O'Brien, for example, in a certain situation, right? He said to Winston Smith that we shall meet in a place that has no darkness. So it was a very well repeated situation in 1984 that you will find Winston Smith repeats, the same words, shall meet in a place that has no, right, any darkness, thinking that it is actually a free word, right, a word without the darkness of tyranny. But he doesn't know that it will end up that the place with no darkness is room 101. Why? Because it doesn't has very bright bulbs into the eyes of the interrogees. And this is a situation. O'Brien himself, right, is a representation of the situational irony. This is exactly as we say in our Palestinian, right, proverbs. Those whom we think that he is actually, right, Moses, we discover that he is Pharaoh, right? يعني اللي بنحسبه موسى ايش بيطلع فرعون. right? يعني احنا بنفكره موسى لكن هو the same thing with the Charrington, right? They are expected to be very friendly people. Charrington, he sold him the diaries, and he thought that he's going to, but he doesn't know that they are reporting him to the big brother. So a situation that is supposed to end somehow, but it ends in the opposite way. Power itself, it is a situational irony. Why? Because power is supposed to be what it is supposed to be, a means for an end, a means for an end. But power inside 1984, all right, it is no longer a means, but it becomes an end. It becomes an end. Why do they need power? For more power, as I told you. The most important thing, which is power in order to dominate, in order to have more power, more power. So instead of being a means, it becomes an end, which is something actually, right, ironic, all right? And this is what we mean by ironic here, a situational irony, all right? A situation that is supposed to end in somehow, expected to end somehow, but it ends in the opposite. زي واحد عيان وبنتوقع انه يموت، اوكي، بعد تاني يوم بنصحى بنلاقيه بيلعب رياضه وبيجري في الشارع البحر. بقول سبحان الله، امبارح كيف كان واليوم كيف كان. Right? امبارح كانوا يقروا عليه الفاتحه. Well, let's come to the second technique, which is the simple presentation. I mean, whenever you make a presentation for your own teacher, some people, they make their own presentations, PowerPoint presentations, full of what? Full of animation, full of colors, and full of sounds, right? And they don't make it simple. They don't actually provide ideas. They provide, okay, images and colors which are meaningless to the teacher and anyone who really cares. But the simple presentation, it is to present things, right, as simple as possible, but at the same time, right, you present ideas. You present ideas. You don't focus on the difficult techniques of the language, rather than the difficulty of accepting, right, the idea. So he presents his own ideas in a simple manner. He doesn't use a difficult language. If you read the text, for example, you will find that the diction is actually a very simple diction, like the diction of the simple journalism, as if you are reading an article. So the first method of the of the presentation, right, is the presentation. Hold on, هذا بعدين بعود ارجع له, right? Okay, we will start from here. That the language is presented in a simple manner. The language is simple, as if you are making a kind of a journal, as if you are reading, resembles the one in journalism in its direct, simple presentation. This can be seen, right, in both the language and imagery. That how in the language, for example, the language is right, sharp diction, direct. It doesn't have two meanings, right, but it is connotative. It is the opposite. A crisp language. What do I mean by crisp? That it is actually newly invented. Crispy language, the language of the right of the 1984 is a kind of a crispy language, created by the writer, new language. Also, you will find that it is a choppy language. I mean, we don't have long sentences, long paragraphs. You will find that, all right, that the whole sentences are short sentences. And this is why we call this type of language, we call it choppy. Choppy means that it has short sentences. And we have repetition. We have repetition, right? So we have, okay, again, I'm trying to explain things as I understand them, and I hope that you understand them. That we finished from the first technique of the anti-utopia, which is the irony, the satire. And now we will come to the second technique, which is the simple presentation. What do we mean by simple presentation? That, right, that the writer presents his language and his ideas, okay, his ideas in a simple manner. He doesn't make it complication, right? So first, right, the first thing that his type of writing, as if he is writing in a journal, as if you are reading an article in a journal, in a newspaper. In a newspaper, it is not difficult. It is not difficult, but right, you will find that the language is new and sharp diction, new and sharp diction, right? This is why we call it crispy. And the language is not a long one. It is, he's using short sentences, and this is why we call it a choppy language. And it is also characterized by a repetition of certain sentences. You will find, right, if you want to see the slogans of for example, of the party, how many times they are repeated, you will find that they are 100 times repeated. Why? Because he wants to show you this is what, okay, happens to you if you are going to become to a subject to the big brother, the big brother. Well, what is the second thing what is the second thing in regarding the presentation, the simple presentation, right? He doesn't waste words, right? That he uses every word, right, in order in its own one, okay, vocabulary. Okay, I mean that he doesn't use extra words, right? But the words that he uses, they are functional. They are functional, straightforward, easily understood vocabulary. And we have inventive language, right? Even sign, right? He invented creation in new words and phrases. He created new words and phrases, right? And either, right, like the word, double think, the creation of new words. Simon, he started to think of words which are lots of words which are created by the writer. Or maybe he uses the language, the casual work language, but to mean something else, like the word vaporization. Vaporization, we know the vaporization of steam. It is a scientific word, but you will find that he is using it in a completely different context. And therefore, right, not only using the language direct and making it a new crispy language, but he invented, right, language in two manners, right? Uses new words and phrases, or uses the words, right, all words for what? For new purposes. Regarding the imagery, you will find that the imagery is actually clear and precise, right? He doesn't use symbolism. He doesn't use symbolism, right? That the language is not symbolic. Unlike, right, some people who say that the language is full of symbolism in his animal form. Yeah, but not in animal form, right? Right. Okay, I see that some people have already written a few things about, right? Asma Abu Hain, سكر الماء. Okay. Well, so what about the imagery? As I said, that the imagery is clear and precise. We don't have symbolism. We don't have deep, right, symbolism. but we have right يعني, direct images, and right, all the images, they portray the decay, right, the decay of the society and the filth of the regime, the decay of the society, the decay of values of freedom, the decay of the humanitarian values, and the filth of the what, the filth of the regime, the political regime. Well, by this we can say that we have right presented يعني, the whole thing, right? يعني, all what I wanted to explain about 1984 already explained, and I'm going to upload to you this presentation on the our website, which is the model. But yet, maybe you can ask me questions about this satire and the simple presentation if you don't feel that you can understand it well. Moran, Moran El-Bitar, what do you mean by like Dickens? Short sentences, you mean like Dickens? No one is like yani, George Orwell, not even Dickens. Okay. طبعا الآن يعني you are going to sit for your midterm إن شاء الله. And for your midterm, I'm going to stop recording. Okay.